Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a necessary and frankly, a pretty urgent look at toxic relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we say toxic, we're not just talking about, having a bad fight or the occasional disagreement.
Not at all.
We're talking about these consistent, corrosive patterns of behavior that they fundamentally change how you see yourself, how you see the world.
Right.
And what makes this so tough to spot is how subtly it can start. I mean, it's not with these obvious shouting matches. It's the small things, these little quiet dismissals or harsh words that just chip away at your confidence until one day you look around and you realize your self-worth has been hollowed out.
That subtle erosion is exactly what we need to illuminate.
Right.
Our mission today is sort of twofold. First, to provide a really high-definition lens on those quiet warning signs.
The red flags.
The emotional, behavioral, all of it, the things that are so easy to rationalize away. And second, and this is maybe the most important part, to provide a clear, actionable blueprint for reclaiming your personal power, your self-protection.
And we should say right up front, this isn't about being weak or not being smart enough to see it.
Absolutely not. Intelligence and strength don't make you immune. Toxic partners can be experts at exploiting empathy or kindness. They know how to use your best qualities against you.
So the goal today is clarity.
Clarity and courage. The courage to prioritize your own well-being.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with those really insidious early emotional red flags. The stuff you feel inside long before the behavior gets, impossible to ignore.
Right.
Number one on this list, and I think everyone recognizes this one, is that feeling of constantly walking on eggshells.
It's the hallmark of anxiety in a relationship. It
Yeah.
really is. You're in this constant state of hypervigilance.
Right.
You find you're censoring your own thoughts, you're editing what you say, or you're hiding your excitement about something just to avoid triggering
Right.
their criticism, their anger, maybe just their disappointment.
So if your main emotion around your partner is just anxiety about their mood,
You're paying a massive internal toll.
a massive one, and that anxiety is so often driven by manipulation, by guilt tripping. And it's not always a big outburst, is it? It can be really polished.
Oh, incredibly polished, passive-aggressive. The manipulation often comes cloaked in this language that sounds sacrificial or wounded.
Like what?
Phrases like, after everything I've done for you, or they make you feel constantly responsible for their emotional state. Your choices, your independence, it's all framed as a personal attack on them.
Can you give an example?
Sure, let's say you get a promotion at work. Instead of celebrating, a toxic partner might immediately pivot to how your new schedule is going to negatively affect them.
Wow.
It completely shifts the focus. It weaponizes your success against you.
And that's where the inconsistency really ties you in knots. I mean, we're talking about the sudden emotional withdrawal, the coldness.
The silent treatment.
Yeah.
That hot and cold cycle is highly strategic. It's not random. Withholding affection or support is a form of punishment.
So it creates scarcity.
Exactly. Emotional scarcity. And that unpredictability keeps you in a state of constant worry. You feel like you have to earn back their approval. You're basically performing for connection instead of just having it.
Okay, so if those are the internal feelings, what about the observable behaviors? Let's talk about control that's disguised as care. How do you tell the difference?
The line is crossed when respect for your autonomy just disappears.
Okay.
Genuine care offers support. It seeks to understand your choices. Controlling behavior criticizes and dictates everything. Your clothes, your job, with this implied message that you can't be trusted.
It's when they check your phone or question you about who you're with for your own good.
That is not love, that's surveillance, and it's designed to undermine your independence.
Which leads right into that roller coaster. The love bombing, followed by devaluation.
This is the classic dependency trap. The love bombing, the extreme praise, the intense affection, the future promises, it's all designed to overwhelm you, to make you drop your guard.
It creates a kind of debt.
An emotional debt, precisely. And once you're hooked, that's when the devaluation begins, the sudden criticism, the neglect. And that whiplash effect creates so much confusion, you become desperate for that perfect person to come back.
Which makes it so hard to leave. You're not focused on the bad stuff, you're focused on getting the good stuff back.
You're focused on restoring the illusion.
So that brings us to the core mechanics, the language they use. Let's start with just dismissal, invalidating your feelings.
The hallmark here is that you leave conversations feeling confused or belittled.
Yeah.
You bring up a valid concern and they hit you with, why are you making such a big deal out of this?
Or you're just too sensitive.
Exactly. When your reality is constantly minimized, you start to doubt if your feelings are valid at all.
And that's usually paired with just intense defensiveness, zero accountability.
Never. A consistent lack of accountability is a flashing red light. You bring up an issue, they immediately deflect, rationalize, or, and this is the most effective, they turn it back on you.
So instead of, I shouldn't have yelled,
It's, well, I wouldn't have yelled if you hadn't provoked me. You end up apologizing for bringing up the problem in the first place.
and the problem never gets solved.
It's shelved indefinitely, and the whole pattern of communication is it's one-sided. It revolves entirely around their needs, their moods. It's not a collaboration. It's a performance with an audience of one.
Now we have to dedicate some time to the deepest tactic here. Gaslighting. Most people have heard the term, but let's dive into why it's so devastating.
Gaslighting is so much more than just lying. It's a systematic denial or twisting of facts, specifically designed to make you question your own mind, your memory, your perception, your sanity.
They insist things didn't happen the way you remember.
With total conviction.
Yeah.
They deny saying things you know they said.
And what's the psychological result of that?
It's a fragmentation of your reality. You become so reliant on their version of things because you can no longer trust your own. It's a calculated takeover of your self-trust.
Which leads to that cycle that makes leaving so hard. Idealization, devaluation, discard, the trauma bond. Why does that pattern create such a powerful, confusing attachment?
This is where we get into the psychology of addiction. The mechanism is something called intermittent reinforcement.
Okay.
Think of a slot machine. If it paid out every single time, you'd get bored. If it never paid out, you'd walk away. But because the reward is unpredictable,
You keep pulling the lever.
you keep pulling the lever. You're alternating between the intense harm of devaluation and the intense affection of idealization. Your brain gets addicted to chasing that unpredictable high.
So the partner is an emotional slot machine.
Exactly.
Ah.
You're constantly chasing the illusion of that perfect person from the beginning and understanding that it's a deliberate pattern, not just a rough patch, that's crucial. You're fighting a neurochemical addiction. It's not a character flaw.
That reframing that's so important. Let's look at the cumulative impact now. The emotional and physical cost of living in that state of high alert.
The toll is profound because the stress is chronic. We see constant anxiety, this feeling of being on edge. And it doesn't stay in your head. It manifests physically. Headaches, insomnia, digestive issues.
Your body is telling you you're not safe.
Your body is screaming it. And internally, the damage to self-esteem is brutal. You find yourself apologizing for everything, constantly seeking approval for tiny decisions.
And that's usually compounded by isolation.
Isolation is the manipulator's best friend. They undermine your time with friends and family, severing your lifelines. It makes you feel completely trapped, totally reliant on their version of reality.
So if the toll is so incredibly high, why do people stay? We have to look at the blind spots.
The first one is simple, but it's so powerful. It's hope. People focus on those good moments, the jackpot,
Yeah.
and they believe their effort or their love can fix the relationship. Leaving feels like admitting failure.
And then there's just the fear of being alone.
A profound fear. Prioritizing companionship, even destructive companionship, over your own health. The familiar pain can feel safer than an uncertain freedom.
And finally, there's the normalization of past trauma.
This is a complex one. If the red flags, the
Right.
criticism, the withdrawal, if they mirror patterns from your childhood, the toxicity can actually feel familiar, almost normal.
So you don't even recognize it as unhealthy.
You might not have a clear picture of what healthy looks like. Breaking that pattern requires a radical redefinition of what you deserve.
That redefinition, that's the perfect pivot to our final section. The blueprint. The shift from diagnosis to action.
Reclaiming your power is a conscious, step-by-step process. And step one is the foundation. Recognize your inherent value.
Meaning your worth is non-negotiable. It was never dependent on that person.
Never. And the practical exercise here is vital. You have to actively rebuild the narrative that was destroyed. List your strengths, your past achievements. Remind yourself of your competence.
And use affirmations.
Yes, but not as hollow words. As declarations. I am worthy of respect. I am worthy of kindness.
And with that foundation, you can move to step 2. Boundaries.
Identify and set boundaries. And remember, boundaries are not selfish. They are necessary rules for how you expect to be treated.
Can you give us a really clear, actionable example? What does setting a boundary actually sound like?
Okay, let's say your partner uses insults when they're angry. The boundary, communicated calmly, is, I will not continue this conversation when I'm being insulted. We can talk later when we can both be respectful.
And the enforcement is the key part.
It is everything. When the insult happens again, you calmly end the interaction. You leave the room, you hang up the phone. A boundary is about controlling your action, not theirs.
And you have to prepare for backlash.
You anticipate it, and you hold firm. The backlash is just a test. Consistency is what teaches them that the new limit is real.
Okay, step 3. Rebuilding self-trust after all that gaslighting.
You start small. Make tiny independent decisions, what to wear, what to eat, and you honor those decisions. Practice saying no without a long explanation. Every small decision you trust yourself on rebuilds that core.
And if leaving is the answer, safety has to be paramount.
Yes. Leaving is a courageous act of self-preservation, and it has to be planned. Identify a support network. Secure your documents, your finances. Have a clear, safe exit arrangement. Preparation gives you back a sense of control.
So what does a healing journey look like after you're out?
It's about rediscovering the identity you lost. Reconnect with hobbies, with goals you put aside. Spend time alone, just for reflection, not for anyone else's approval.
And rebuilding your self-esteem.
Celebrate every small victory, every boundary you hold. And then you consciously surround yourself with people who embody mutual respect, people who validate your experience without question.
This has been a really powerful deep dive. We've gone from recognition to the mechanics all the way to liberation.
It's just so crucial to remember that your emotional well-being isn't a luxury. It's the absolute foundation for a whole life. Every boundary you set, every act of self-care, it's a declaration that you matter.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Choosing yourself is not a selfish act. It is the ultimate foundation for freedom, for clarity, and for the authentic connections you were always meant to have. If you recognize yourself in these patterns today, please know that healing is not only possible, it is inevitable when you commit to honoring your own worth. Gaining this knowledge, this is the first step.